Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamed, Highland Park Conservative Temple, Congregation on Shemet, and my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, and Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanowski, Anshe Chesed in New York City. It's great to see you. We're recording this still before the end, but we want to talk to you about Vayigash, an amazing Parsha. Vayigash, what happens? Joseph puts Benjamin in jail, framed him with the silver goblet, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to keep Benjamin there forever. Judah now has ascended to family prominence. In the words that begin this parsha, Vayigash elav Yehuda, he comes close to him. Vayomer bi Adoni yedaber na avdecha davar bo'oznein. Let me speak to you. Don't be angry. And he goes through the whole story. It's a long, long speech. And tell me, I want to, you know what? Give me the reaction here. Chapter 45, open the Chumash, and Joseph is reacting from verse 1.
Well, just before you run away, it is a long speech, but Judah tells this guy named Sofnat Paneach. He's got this Egyptian name, which I read somewhere that in Egypt it means like, God provides the food. But in Hebrew, the Tzadik Pei Nun Sofnat Paneach Pei Ayin Nun Chet looks like it means the decipherer of secrets, the one who can see past all the costuming. And he says to him, I got to tell you this story. And it's a story about a father who loves a child, and we've been back and forth, and I cannot go back without this child whom you're about to imprison. It'll break the old man's heart. And of course, Joseph, he loves his father and hates his father. This is the paradigmatic human being. He loves his father so much. He was his father's favorite. Benjamin, by virtue of being his full brother from Rachel, he's his father's next favorite. The two of them are a match set. And he blames, presumably, his father set him up for the brothers to attack him. So he's got a lot of ambivalence. And Judah closes off his speech. I said last week, long ago when we recorded last week's parasha, I said that Joseph is setting his brothers up to not, for the first time after so many times in which they let one poor brother be abandoned and let one poor brother be sent into jail. This time they're not going to do that. They're going to come through for Benjamin with a brotherly feeling. And Judah's last words, Ki ech e'ele alavi, how can I go back up to Canaan to my father? V'hanar einenu iti, with the young man not with me. Pen bera asher yinsa et avi. I can't imagine how much suffering that's going to cause him. Right. And then hit it.
So what he does then is Yehuda sacrifices, or is willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of his brother. Let Benjamin go, and I will stay behind. Whereas before, no one was willing to sacrifice himself for Yosef.
Or for Shimon.
And I think that really is the greatness of Yehuda. And it also it clarifies for us the bizarre interchange earlier when Reuven was willing to have his own two sons killed if they don't come back with Benjamin. And Yehuda says, I pledged my life.
I want to just add one layer of this, which only occurs to me, after reading the story of Judah in two parshas ago in depth, which is that Judah himself is a bereaved father. Judah has lost two sons already. Judah has lost Er and lost Onan. Now, they may have been despicable human beings. That's different. It doesn't matter. He's got this loss. And it's not that he has nothing to live for after being bereaved. He certainly has, but he's the most, as far as the Torah has delivered to us, the most dented, the most damaged, he's been the most affected by life. And therefore he's been the character that has experienced the most loss and the most transition, the most wisdom, basically. And that he is the noble survivor. he has attained a status through his own personal experience that almost makes him untouchable, I think.
So as long as you mention this, there's a curiosity later in the Parsha. So right before the end of the Parsha, there's going to be a genealogy of the sons and grandsons of Jacob that go into Egypt. And they're done by wife, first Leah, and it says there are 33. But included in the 33 are Aaron and Nona.
Interesting. So
so what do we make of that?
Yeah. Don't know.
There's got to be a midrashic.
It does, because they're the only two that have died.
And it's necessary that the numbers work out, right? Because you have to add up to 7.
Well, okay, the numbers, it's hard to make them work out. They're very confusing, but in terms of how the Torah sets itself up, it's 33 descendants of the Leah group, the sons and grandsons, and there are Nona, and they're among them.
But does it turn out to be, and I don't remember here, but does it turn out to be that it lists 72, which will be fine because 70 souls go down to Egypt? Because then Aaron and Onan can be in the genealogy because, they were in part of the family, but they're not with us anymore. It could be
Barry,
like
that verse in chapter 46, verse 12, it says, Vayamot Erev Onan Be'eretz Canaan. So it does say that they're dead, right? So maybe they're included in the 33, but it's 33 minus. I don't know.
But anyway, we started to tell the story. I told the bit about Judah's speech. He tells the speech, and it is all but design. I mean, within the story, the character Judah does not know that Sofnat Paneach is actually Yosef, but the story he's told is like it is. He's trying to break his heart, and he totally succeeds because Elliot hit at 45 number 1.
He couldn't hold himself back. That to all the people standing around, Vayikra. This is amazing. He says, get everyone out of here. And nobody stood with him. When Joseph revealed himself to his brothers. So look at this scene. The scene is so built with tension. Get everybody out of here. Everybody out.
And then the camera goes outside. The camera goes outside. Because get everybody out. And the camera says, and nobody could hear what went on outside. It's as if you cinematically, so everybody get out. And then for a moment, the shot, you are standing among the people who've just been thrown out of the room.
Then he cries. Such a evocative expression, to give your voice in cry, right? Vayiten et kolo bivchi, in wailing. It's this uncontrollable wailing, and they hear Vayishmu Mitzrayim, and that's the beautiful artistry of the narrative, that he's crying. We're in the crucible with him in the room, and everybody hears what's going on. And of course,
by the way, this line of he calls out his voice in tears. This is when Jacob first goes to Mesopotamia. He meets Rachel at the well.
Yeah.
Vayishak Yaakov leRachel, vayisa et kolo vayefk. Jacob kisses her, and he vayisak kolo et kolo. He lifts his voice as opposed to he gives his voice, but it's almost the exact same. Vayisa et kolo vayefk, and he gives his voice and cries. So here you have the story about his parents meeting, that romantic scene, and now him connecting with his brothers, and it's almost the identical language.
It's catharsis. And so I want to ask you a question about the breakdown, because it's an emotional breakdown. Whenever someone experiences this, it's not only one thing, it's the whole cascade of everything. Everything gets kind of funneled into this moment. It's uncontrollable weeping here. And I think what is so artful in the way that the story is narrated is that we're there on the stage, we're there in the room as it happens. We're witnessing this. We're seeing this play itself out. It's hard not to feel ourselves a kind of emotion, the same way that you would when you watch a play or when you see him, and it's so striking, the crisis moment, and you still wonder, how is he going to manage this? How is he going to deal with this? That's the moment of suspense there, which is totally relieved when he says, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph, Ha'od avichai, is my father yet alive? And why does he even ask that? That's a very strange question to ask upon the revelation of, it's like, I am Joseph, look at me, and or he's saying, is my father still alive? So how do you react to that? How do you react to that question?
So I think part of the answer has to do with the fact that 22 years have elapsed since Joseph last saw Jacob. And however we want to characterize Joseph, we have to come to terms in some way that Joseph, from the Torah's record, made no attempt to contact his father. And it's so he has become an Egyptian for all intents and purposes. And in this moment, he realizes he's Yosef the Israelite. He's not an Egyptian. That his family, his children and wife notwithstanding, are not in Egypt. It's in Canaan. And it's like a recognition that he shut his father out of his life. So even though he's been talking with his brothers about the father and about Benjamin, it suddenly realizes that he never once asked about his father.
I know it's crazy that he was the most powerful. I mean, this is the expression of ambivalence in Yosef, like you said, Elliot. Great emotion is never one thing. It wouldn't be like if this was just math. It wouldn't be, math is an answer. 2 + 2 is 4, but emotions are never like that. Joseph is the most powerful man in Egypt for 22 years, or he wasn't the most powerful guy for 22 years. It's been 22 years since he was there. He was in prison. He suffered, but he's now been in charge for a while. As Deuteronomy will tell us, it only takes 11 days to go up the coast from Egypt to Canaan. He totally could have and chose not to.
So I want to just rebut a little bit, which is, yeah, he didn't write a letter, he didn't send a postcard, he didn't send a message, he didn't do anything. But we
he didn't
all
Zoom. He didn't send a Zoom link.
He didn't
He could have sent a Zoom link.
But the father accepts the torn tunic and never goes beyond that.
I disagree with you.
Wait. I find that a little odd. Okay, I'm put Jacob here in the box and say, wait a minute, you didn't want to go to the scene of the crime, you didn't want to investigate yourself, there are people. I read a story recently of a woman whose mother put her in a monastery and said, I'm going to be back for you. I think I told this last week or 2 weeks ago. I'm going to come back for you. And she's 90 years old. She's still looking for her mother. Okay. So, the search for the child, I mean, we see these stories daily in the news where a lost child, there's a situation last year at Meron, right? There was this kid, Moishi, who got lost in Meron, and the parents are still looking for him. And they're turning it upside down. They're turning the mountain upside down for him, right?
In my preparation to go to New Orleans for vacation, I was watching a little bit of Treme, the HBO series Treme, and this a mother waiting for a child who's not going to come back from the Katrina flood, but she waits. She's waiting every day and trying for every piece of information. We can think about
after 9/11. Do you remember? I mean, people putting up these, they didn't know what to do, right? It was so unfathomable, right? Missing. I mean, where do you think they are? They're missing. Maybe they'll come back, and that's when something suddenly happens like that, and someone suddenly left, you want to look for them, and Jacob doesn't look for them.
I want to push back. I think that what he recognizes is that it's a tunic with blood on it.
To what? I'm sorry?
It's a tunic that has blood on it, and it's definitely Joseph's. It seems to mean that he's dead, but he knows there's no body. And he makes reference to that there not being a body, I think, in this Parsha, where he says, I had a son, but he's not here. He doesn't say he died. So I think that there's a sense that his head tells him one thing, but his heart tells him something else. And so it's not quite clear. And I think the other thing that we might want to consider at least a little bit is that in the ancient world, people disappeared all the time. It was not an uncommon thing, it was a common thing for all sorts of reasons. Right? I mean, we have a whole tractate of Talmud Yevamot dedicated to a woman whose husband disappears because that was a reality. You couldn't always tell if someone was dead or missing.
Yeah, but
Nope.
the tractate is built on the possibility, maybe, and what do you do? And so that possibility has to be present somewhere on at least a psychological level for Jacob, and he never acts on it. He never says, "I wonder what would happen." And maybe or he becomes so accepting of the reality of the tunic that
Well,
he can't.
but consider what happens.
Okay.
They come back with the tunic, and he says, I will go to Sheol or whatever he says. And then the next thing we have the story of Judah and Tamar.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you. Okay.
But
So,
actually, Elliot, I'm surprised that you're. I mean, first of all, I think you are right that the story is of Joseph who could have and Jacob who could have, and they could have overcome some of the gap that
Distance.
separates them. But I think what Barry said is kind of decisive. That's how the Torah says. That's how the Torah says. There's some straws of hope here that Joseph is einenu, that there was one, and there's one. There was one, and he's not present. And I think that the Torah is like in its literary way, slyly saying this story is not over, and we happen to know that the story is not over. And
sure.
so I think that the gap between the two people it is like the animating tension, and neither of them has done what we might have wanted them to do. But had they done that, then there would be no story. The story is about, and because the Hebrew Bible is so very heavily about exile and homecoming, you've been sent to Egypt, you've been sent to Mesopotamia, you long to get back to a homeland. It's true, and Abraham makes a journey, and Rebecca makes a journey, and Joseph and Jacob, they all have to make these journeys between Egypt and Mesopotamia, and it's all about that sense of alienation, and it's Gola v'nechar, it's about exile and alienation, and they're trying to get back. But had they just, Joseph just picked up a caravan and scooted up to Canaan to say hello, it wouldn't be this story of protracted alienation, which ultimately arise in a reconciliation. That's what we're going for.
Right. Okay. So then go back to the pain of it. The pain. I'm going to offer that Vayitin et kolo b'vchi, that he by putting out his voice in crying, it's not only about the brothers. It's not only about the brothers. It's about his father. It's about his life. It's about Egypt. It's about the sense that I'm alienated. It's about the sense that he understands. I'm going to, do a little eisegesis here. I'll put it in and say, does he understand that he's really not a free person? That he has the power, the wealth, and he has the prestige of all of that trappings of office, but he really knows that he can't do anything without Pharaoh's permission. And does he have regret? Maybe he could have been something else in his life, and all of that, and that there's the emotion here is just everything compounded with everything. It's not just one dimensional. It's not just me and my brothers because they beat me up and put me in a pit and stripped me naked and I was crying. It's not only because of that. It's because my father, I don't have a mother, I don't have a mother-in-law, I don't have an aunt, I don't have cousins, I don't have anything, and I can't even, lift up a coin without Pharaoh.
That there's a guy in my community who, at about 14 maybe, he's from Bycz, Poland. Bycz is the name of his hometown. Whatever, how do you say that now in Polish? And he told me that when he had to flee, when the Nazis came, he sort of attached himself to an older than him, not an old woman, a young mother. She was, let's say she was 25, and he's like 13 or 14, and she's got a little baby, and he's just following her, and he won't kind of let her go, and he's hoping that she will sort of mother him a little bit, and she just wants to get rid of this kid. And so they run to a barn and they hide in a barn, and she's just she wants to she wants to get rid of him. She can't because she's just desperate to take care of her own child, and she's in terrible straits herself. And I'm wondering about how many Shoah stories, involve at some level a sense of betrayal from your fellow Jew or your fellow family member or something like that. That you're panicking. You're so and Joseph. One of the ways that the story speaks to an audience, a reader, a Jew hearing this story is we talked about it in last week's parasha. He's begging for help and they ignore him. He's got to feel that abandonment, which I bet you lots of Jews over the centuries have felt, my brothers really did sell me down the river.
We're having that now. That's part of the internal Jewish debate now between Israel and the diaspora, in terms of who's abandoning whom and who's betraying whom, and how everybody is kind of figuring out, this relationship. I mean, I say to people all the time, if you want to do therapy, you put Israel in one couch and American Jewry in another, and have them work out their issues, because it's painful sometimes, And that's what it is. Sibling relations are painful when they're not beautiful, right?
So can I just say one thing about on a sort of a musical liturgical level here? When Shlomo Carlebach, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. So I don't know exactly when he wrote that, but let's roughly, north or south of 1970. It's after the 6-Day War. It's around the Yom Kippur War. It's part of the
Russian Jewry,
Soviet Jewry. It's within, the very close shadow of the Shoah. And Am Yisrael Chai, Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai, our father is still alive. And it's a quotation here of just Ha'od Avichai, does my father really yet live? And we talked before we started recording. Is that a simple interrogative? Is he's asking for the fact of Jacob's being alive or dead? Or is it just an expression of wonder? Od Avichai, is my father really still alive? And the affirmation in the Carlebach song, yes, no matter the suffering, no matter the fear, Yaakov Avinu lo met, as the Talmud says, Jacob never really died. Jacob is still alive because we're still alive. And the affirmation in the song of, indeed, Jacob is still alive because we're still alive, and the Nazis didn't kill, and the Soviets didn't kill, and Nasser didn't kill, and Yasser Arafat didn't kill. We're still alive. It's just that'll really. I feel tremendous affirmation from that pasuk.
Oh, Davichai. Yes, it's anthemic, as it were. Okay. So they have their moment. He has a doubling of this moment, and he says, Ani Yosef Achichem, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold to Egypt. And on and on and on and on. And he explains it, Shlachani Elohim lifnechem, right? God is part of this. I want to ask you this question, okay? They kiss, and then it says this lovely verse, 45, verse 16. V'akol nishma beit paro lemor. And the word or the voice is heard in the household of Pharaoh saying, Ba'u achei Yosef, the brothers of Joseph have come, v'yitav be'nei paro u'be'nei avadav. And it was good in Pharaoh's eyes and in the eyes of his servants. So I want to just drill down on this moment here, okay, and try and react and figure out Pharaoh's reaction. Is it a sentimental, good feeling reaction, which is, oh, look at this, the family's together, what a great story, or is it a utilitarian reaction? Is it?
Well, it begs the question though. What did Joseph say about his family?
Yeah.
Right? He comes to Egypt as a slave, and he can make up any story he wants because the only thing that anyone knows is someone sold him.
Well, I just went back and looked a second ago. Mrs. Potiphar refers to him as a Nar Ivri, and the butler, when he when he at the beginning of Miketz, when he says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that I met this dream interpreter," and he also calls him a Na'ar Ivri.
Right. That's an ethnic term, not a familial term.
But what I mean by that is, well, I think it is an ethnic term. By the way, I read an article that said that Ivri, as opposed to Yehudi or Yisrael or something like that, is typically used. It is an ethnic term typically used like by others, not a self-definition. It's what you would say to Pharaoh. Talk about the Ivriim, Elohei Ivriim Shlachani. Moses says that God of the Hebrews, because that's what Pharaoh would understand. Looking at them as an ethnic group. But
right. Jonah is the only one I think who identifies himself.
Jonah says, "I am a Hebrew." That's right. But what I was going to just say, as it fits into this story, is that he is known in the Egyptian world, at least at the beginning of his rise to power. It was known that he went into jail as an Ivri, and it's known that he came out of jail as an Ivri. Now, this is X many years later. Maybe that knowledge has been forgotten. But if the brothers have come down to Egypt, and there's this Mr. Egyptian, Safnat Paneach, who was like super duper powerful, wouldn't it be interesting if they had ever done a little reconnaissance mission, a little intelligence gathering, and said, who is this guy? And somebody would have told them, well, he was a Hebrew guy from Canaan who was thrown into jail, and he's risen to power. Maybe the brothers, Nafal HaAsimon, maybe they might have figured it out.
Wow. I'm on Pharaoh here. I'm thinking Vaitav, but he likes this. Let me put this one at you, which is, I don't want to say he's the first anti-Semite, okay, but because
make him the second one. Tell us who the first really is.
Cain was the first. No,
I was going to say that Cain. There was no Semites yet, but Cain and maybe Ham will be Canaan.
He has he sees Joseph as so amazing, and so maybe he thinks they're all like that, And
what makes that anti-Semitic?
I'm only saying this because I had a music teacher in Ottawa when I was growing up who said, today you could never get away with saying this. He said, "You Jews, you are either very smart or very stupid." It's a horrible thing to say, but there's a caricature.
But so true.
Caricature of Jews, right? That we're all smart and we control everything. Of course, that's an anti-Semitic canard, right? But here, Pharaoh's got the same. I'm going to say, does he have the same idea that all of you people coming from Canaan have your wits about you, and that I could use you? I could find a place for you in Egypt that will make me more powerful and give me more wealth.
Okay, I it's an interesting interpretation, but I think we also have to take into account perhaps that this is the second year of the famine. There are 5 more years to go, and Joseph realizes that there are tough times ahead, and I think Pharaoh knows this too. So if these people might be able to help him, I think that would be a good thing, not a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing because it's all utilitarian. It's all transactional.
I don't know that it is, because I think sometimes we judge characters. There's that great line about Ishmael that Basher Husham, that God provided for Ishmael when he was sent away with Hagar at the place where he was, because of the rabbinic imagination of a discussion where the angels say, how can you help Ishmael? He's going to grow up and be an enemy of the Jewish people. And God said, well, right now he's not an enemy and he needs help. And I think that, sometimes we judge Pharaoh, especially enemies of Jews, the people who are perceived as enemies, by the end rather than the beginning. It may be that it's an honest response.
I think that's right, and a good generous reading, because let's just transpose this for a moment into American life and thinking about immigration in a time of crisis. Like, America's obviously a very wealthy country, but we can't take everybody. And so we try to have some border controls, but there's really literally, tens and hundreds of thousands of Latin Americans at the southern border, and we kind of say, well, we can't afford, to just bring in everybody. But then other people say, well, actually, the economy is driven by immigrants, and especially highly skilled immigrants, and so it would not be strange for me to think, in what you're calling the transactional way, that Pharaoh's going to say, actually, this can help our society generally. But even if it's not the transactional thing, Pharaoh is in charge of a country that is in the beginnings of a crisis that he knows is going to last for a while. And somebody comes and says, listen, we're some refugees, and we got cattle, and we need some grazing place. And he says, okay. And it's because of his relationship with Joseph, and maybe it's transactional because he thinks they can bring something to the society. But I think it's also just like pretty good. And by the way, when Deuteronomy will later say, Lo titaev Mitzri, you can't hate Egyptians, ki ger hayita be'artzo, because you were a stranger in his land. I think that it means, like, okay, I know it worked out pretty badly, and in the end, the Egyptians were tremendously oppressive, but there was a moment in which they welcomed you, and you got to be grateful for that moment. And I think that we're seeing that by Tav B'nai Paro. I think that's
right. The other piece of it, Elliot, I just want to add one more thing, is that it's a family reunification story. How could that not be heartwarming? Of course, we feel good about it.
So I want to. I'm sorry to read a little sinister valence here.
You like being sinister.
I don't like it.
You want it darker? You want it darker? He killed the flame. Yeah.
Respect him, honor him, and suspect him. Right. And I'll tell you, really, the real reason why I'm saying this is because this expression "vayitav be'enei someone," is odd. And I did a little investigation about it, and it's different from vayira be'enei. Vayera it seems like the opposite. It was evil. It's evil in the sight of God is a moral evil. Good in the sight of someone is not a moral good, but seems to be a utilitarian good. And here Pharaoh, I mean, of course it's a good story, and of course it's heartwarming, but he's Pharaoh, and he's always got to think of, like, the politics of it and the power of it, right? And
okay, so then I think we have to discuss a little bit about Joseph's reaction to that. And Joseph's reaction is to have his brothers say, "We're shepherds."
Yeah, he does.
Right? We don't want to mix with you.
Right, and they don't.
Right? He can't say we don't want to mix with you. All he can say is, "Tell them you're shepherds, and Pharaoh will do the job that you want to do."
Right.
So that way it might support your reading.
Yes, and they end up not saying that. They don't want to. Pharaoh wants them to say, or sorry, Joseph wants them to say, "We are men of herds," Anshe Mikneh, and they say, "We're shepherds." Right?
Do you think you remember the scene where it says that it's a toeva for the Egyptians to eat with the Hebrews? For whatever reason, they've got a caste system or some sort of taboo. But do you think that Joseph, because he was known to be a Hebrew, do you think that Joseph, in all these years of power, never got invited to dinner because it was a toeva?
It's a good.
So
question.
there you have to read closely. Is the toeva to eat with Ivrim or an Ivri?
All right, conceivably, it's a singular plural thing.
So it could be that because Joseph is one Ivri, he's not treif, but a group of them you can't eat.
It's also conceivable that he, so to speak, converts, like that he because of his prominence, and he's given in marriage the character with, no doubt, for us English speakers, the best name in the entire Hebrew Bible. Osnat. Osnat, the daughter of Potiphera Kohen On. She's the daughter of Potiphera. Maybe he's the same as Potiphar, maybe he's not. I love Israelis when they name the kids Osnat and they come to the United States. It's just not good.
Oh, yeah,
But maybe he converted. Maybe like he married into a good family, and they were prepared to treat him no
Well, she
longer.
was definitely a good family.
Well, I have my thoughts about that, but anyway, we're running out of time. And Jacob, Joseph, they meet, and this whole thing, it's all so heartwarming and heart crushing and everything. But we've run out of time. We're going to pick it up on our next Parsha Talk with the conclusion of the book of John. I don't want to let it go. I don't want to let it go. I don't want.
Well, we have one more week.
I know, but we love these.
Listen to this. We recorded Parsha Talk for many years at camp, but we began recording Parsha Talk in 2020, and we went through all 2021, and this is the last Parsha of 2022, and our next Parsha Talk will be the first Parsha Talk of 2023.
That's amazing. On that
in your book.
Okay. Well, happy everything, and we'll see you all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.